All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Hope you all had a nice break this past weekend. And whether you're still working from home or back at the office already or transitioning back, hope you guys, you and your families, everybody's staying safe and healthy. So just want to welcome everybody. Thanks for attending Cloudpoint Geographics webinar and upgrading your enterprise GIS, what it means and how to keep up. My name is Bill Steele. I handle the business development and marketing for Cloudpoint. Michael Williamson, one of our certified GIS professionals, he's going to fill us in on ArcGIS Enterprise. He's going to range from portal versus online, updates from Esri. I know there's some coming soon here later this year, and even best practice recommendations. So before we dive in, though, just want to let you guys know that we are going to continue hosting webinars in the coming weeks and months as we transition back to our office as well. So coming in June, we've got another webinar on our indoors facility mapping. That's June 12th. And then GIS for cemeteries, how we can help cemeteries with their records and maps. That's June 23rd. And then the day after that is a reprisal of our introduction to parcel fabric. That was a really popular one about a month or so back. Had quite a few people sign up for that, so that's a good one there on June 24th. And then starting in July, another reprisal on our sign inventory management system, Sign-Ops, and what we can do there. So keep your eyes out for that. cloudpointgo.com/webinars has our full slate. And again, we're trying to get things booked out through the rest of the year, so keep checking in there. And then also just to let you guys know, this is a Zoom webinar, so we won't see you. We'll have your cameras or microphones on. For questions, we will do question and answers at the end. You can submit those at any time. Just click the little Q&A button down at the bottom there on your toolbar. You could shoot those to us. Also the chat room. I know Mike is going to put some links in there for you guys to check some things out after. But if anything messes up, you can't hear us or see us, just go ahead and shoot us the chat. So I know that you guys, some of you worked with us before. Most of you might be familiar with this. To just fill you in, we work in a lot of sectors: public works, facilities, land records. I mentioned cemeteries, indoors, and as a trusted Esri business partner, we help people drive intelligent decision-making using mapping technology. And one of those technologies, of course, is ArcGIS Enterprise. And here to tell us more about that is Micah.
Hi, everybody. This is Michael Williamson, and I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get moving. All right. So what we're going to talk about today is ArcGIS Enterprise, and I know we all have our own ideas about ArcGIS Enterprise and how it's advanced and progressed over the years, and how to really keep updated with Esri, because there are so many changes a year. It's really kind of become a full-time job, literally, to maintain and keep up your enterprise GIS. And I'm not just talking, the generic term of enterprise GIS. I'm talking about specifically with Esri and what you need and if you need to update and all that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do is talk about we're going to compare and contrast ArcGIS Online to ArcGIS Portal. We're going to talk about some of the deployment tools that you can use, some ideas. I'm just going to talk about it in normal language. I'm not going to use a lot of Esri's terms. I use their little icons and things, but I'm not exactly going to. This is not a canned Esri presentation. So we're going to talk about it in frank and practical terms, and then we'll kind of move in from there to help you understand how to find your actual version. And then also maybe we'll talk about what's new in the different versions, and also what's upcoming. And stuttering a little bit because I forgot to log into my server, so I'm actually gonna have to do that on the fly here. Hold on just a second. Sorry about this. Okay, that's booting up, so I will be able to show you that when I need to. Okay, moving on. So the first thing that we're going to do is a survey. The survey that we want to be able to talk about is, and I think Bill's going to pop this up, and it's going to pop up on your screen. There's a with a green bar up at the top. It says, how much do you use ArcGIS Online versus Portal? So that's the question for us. How do you use Portal 100% of the time, or do you use ArcGIS Online 100% of the time, or somewhere in between? I didn't want to make this too overwhelming, and this is the best way we figured out how to do this when it's a multiple choice. So if you could take a look at that and answer that, and I would
Yep, we've got
appreciate that.
almost, let's see, 15 to 20 people. Might be a couple. I think
Okay.
a couple people called in, so I'll give it a couple seconds here. We'll go ahead and close that out.
I don't know how the call-in thing works.
So Micah, looks like 9 out of 20 people say 100% AGO. Got a couple people 2080 AGO to Portal. One person 80/20 for Portal versus AGO, but no one's 100% Portal.
Okay, all right. Well, that's kind of where we're at ourselves, and kind of where most of clients that we talk to. So there you go. I see it. Yep. I see the results now. That's great. Okay, that's kind of what I thought it would be. But that's helpful to know and helpful to be able to kind of guide our conversation and what we're doing. So the idea of ArcGIS to Portal, here's what it is. ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Portal are essentially the same product, right? But it's whether it's on your premise and whether it's under your management and whether it's under your responsibility to update. So those releases that happen when they release with ArcGIS Online, it just gets updated. Every quarter, Esri updates ArcGIS Online. It can be a small update or it can be a larger update. It doesn't necessarily matter, but they update it. And since it's a software as a service or a SaaS, then you don't necessarily even know or care unless it's, you know, a button change or somewhere they move something. But that happens all the time. So you're responsible when it's your portal. You're the one who's responsible for doing those updates. Now you can extend Portal. You can look into the program files. You can see the backend database if you wanted to. It's kind of buried, but all of that is available to you because it's on your own environments. Now, also with ArcGIS Online, and maybe this is one of the downsides of ArcGIS Online, you have to purchase each user of ArcGIS Online. So whether it's a viewer or whether it's an editor, or whether it's a field worker or all that other stuff that they've talked about, you have to purchase every single logon. With Portal, they allow you to have unlimited number of viewers. If you've ever gone through the process of having to use or install Portal, you'll know that you have to go on how many users do you want, and you can have as many as you want. You can say 1,000 or whatever, because at that point, it's really based on your hardware and what your hardware can handle, right? We've also done some implementations of Portal that is completely behind the firewall and removed from the internet. That takes a lot because you have to download base maps and things like that, and it's kind of a big nuisance. But whether it's completely offline and sequestered from the internet, or if it just allows access to arcgis.com to be able to get the base maps, that's a little bit easier. You can still keep your data segregated as well. So some of the concerns that people have when they do Portal is more of a safety concern. The other thing that is kind of here, and by one of the reasons you're here, it's almost an unspoken rule, is this is how Esri is moving enterprise. They're moving to Portal. They're moving feature services. They're moving all of their things to be able to use and expect what Portal is. So there are some things that ArcGIS Online can't do with your local data. When you put data on ArcGIS Online, you're copying it up to that service, that hosted service. So it's on the data that you upload to ArcGIS Online is on Esri's server, whereas the data that you upload to your portal is on your server. So those are some of the considerations that you have. Now, the base deployments. Esri talks a lot about their base deployment, and they makes a, this nice little graph that's here, this nice little graphic shows you only 5 things, but it can be so much more than that. All of these things can be on one server. All of these represent installations or an install file, and all of these are required to have the base deployment. Now, I say that, but I'm telling you right now that if you didn't want to, even at 10.8, if you didn't want to use Portal, you can just kind of not install it. Now, you're losing out on a lot of things, but you're also kind of simplifying and making it feel a lot like ArcGIS Server always was before 10.5. So if you really wanted to do that, you could not install that. There we go. All right. The other thing when we talk about base deployments, there are some things that we have to know. Everything is secure by default. And at the higher levels of installation, the 10.6.1 and above, it's really required that you have a certificate. So all of these, your 2 web adapters need to be on a web server that has an HTTPS certificate. And this requires you talking with and working with your IT folks. Maybe you're in IT, that's great. This requires a CA signed, a certificate authority signed SSL certificate. It can be basic. These are going to run you somewhere between $100 to $400, depending on where you get it and how easy it is to use and things like that. Sometimes people talk about getting them for free on some services. It's a little bit janky and hard to use, but this requires an SSL certificate to be installed on the server. And we're going to call that the web tier, right? This is awful to write with a mouse, but that's what it is. So that's the web tier. Those can be the only thing that are installed as far as Esri is concerned on the web server, and that is out in the DMZ. It can push out to the internet. All these other components can be on one machine, right? Or they can be on 3 separate machines, right? And I've found the best way is to have 4 separate machines, one for each one of these different configurations, one for each one of these different installations, right? Your data store is essentially your database that is a hosted database for Portal. What I mean when I say that is your Portal uses, when you do run analysis or you upload things to Portal, it's putting that onto this data store, right? Just to let you know, this is a Postgres database that's installed when you install the data store. It looks at you, the only way to get access to it is the data that's put on here is through your Portal. So you can't necessarily use pgadmin or anything like that. If you're familiar with that Postgres stuff, you can't necessarily use that to look at the database. You interact with the database in the data store through your Portal install, right? This is not your SDE data. And I want to point that out. Your existing SDE data is an aside to that data store that you've got. You can put them on the same machine, sure, no problem. But it does not replace your existing SDE. I want to make that very clear. You don't have to migrate all of your existing data, and we've been doing this for 20 years. We've been creating our GIS database to be the right schema, it's been calibrated, the domains are there, all of that. You're not getting rid of your SDE. It still exists, and it can exist on the same server that it is right now, as long as it's SQL 2012 or Postgres 10 or up. All of those things, you can keep that exactly how it is and make it a part of your Portal system. The data store is required to be able to use mapping or analytics on Portal. And I'm going to just show my our own server here just for a second. What I mean, and this is our Portal instance, so when I go to organization, and I'm going to go to settings, we have 10.7.1 here. There is an instance on here under servers. And this server is a local, it's not this machine that I'm looking at. This is our web server. It's on, and we're on Amazon. This is an Amazon server. Do you see that check mark that just happened? That means that this server is a valid ArcGIS server, and then it also can be a hosting server because I've installed the data store on here. So since I've installed that data store, I'm able to go to my map and I can do analytics. The quickest and easiest way to see if you can do that on your Portal install is if you have this button. If you have this analysis button, then you have a data store that is enabled to run query or run buffer or watersheds or things like that on your Portal because it has a place to put the data. I'm not going to call it, I called it a scratch database for a while, but I was kind of, it's kind of not that, and I've kind of been changed my vocabulary, but you might want to think of it as Portal's scratch database for an easy way to think about it. So that's a way to look at your data to be able to know if you have a data store enabled, is to be able to see if you have an analysis button. But again, I want you to know that that ArcGIS data store is an additional repository of data to which your SDE. And yeah, there is some confusion on, do you put stuff in the Esri's data store or do you put it in your SDE? That's going to be a process that you're going to have, workflow that you're going to have to figure out. All right, nobody's going to be able to tell you what to do. You have to decide on that. All right. So these systems, as we kind of go through this, the Portal happens to be rather of a, I'm going to call it a chatty program. It needs a lot of RAM. There's a, it runs a Java exe, and that Java exe will take, it's like SQL in the way, it'll take as much as you throw at. So your Portal server needs to be fairly robust as far as RAM goes. Great would be 32. Tolerable, 16. Anything less than 16, you're going to be waiting a little bit, just to be honest with you. Your Portal server, or sorry, your ArcGIS server, this is the guts of ArcGIS. This is how you know and what you know to be ArcGIS server. That is CPUs, or the better, more CPUs in that, the better. But that's also what Esri licenses. If you're familiar with Esri licensing, they license by the core. And that's because that's what this program is built to use. And then the data store. You could see your data store like we had before, where it's in the same place, the same server as your SDE, or you can put a data store so that it's on the same as your ArcGIS server. Either one works. If you have a really robust server, go ahead and put it on your server, and then that data will stay there on that server. The ArcGIS web adapters can be on, they can be on your Portal server if you only have a few servers to work with. That can happen. But this needs to be out and in the, have access to the internet. So if you feel comfortable with having Portal on the same box that's maybe pointed out to the internet, that's okay. If you want these sequestered on their own server, then that probably is recommended too, to get it onto its own machine. Those are some deployments. There's a whole document that I'm going to share with you later that helps understand, and it is a little bit confusing, but the biggest thing that I can say with this is work with your IT. You need to be able to work with your IT department to be able to help you create these things, or find a partner, like us or someone else to be able to help you navigate through this. Get as many servers as you can. If you can get 4, great. If you can get 3, great. 2 is 1. I wouldn't put Enterprise on one server unless I was developing. And most Esri people will tell you that if you back them into a corner. Don't use it for production on one server. All right, moving on. means we've got a lot to get through. I'm going to take another survey. What version of Enterprise do you have? This will help guide our conversation. What version of server do you have? All right, popped up.
Yep, there we go. Questions up. Let's see. Answers all over the place. That's good. We'll give you guys a couple more seconds here. Looks like most everybody's voted. All right, let's go ahead and we'll share those real quick.
Don't know. That's fine. I'm going to show you how. 10.5 to 10.5.1, 10.8. Look at 3 brave souls with 10.8. Great. 10.6, 10.7. Yeah, it is quite a bit all over the board. It's good to know.
Good.
All right. So, how do you know? Good question. So this is the server that I was just on a second ago. Let me see if I can maximize this. No, it's not going to give me the. I was hoping that it would show me to be able to kind of move around here. Hold on a second. What I want you to do is on your server, this is the server that you have ArcGIS Server or Portal on. The best thing and the easiest way for you to know is to go to the Windows and click on ArcGIS, and down at the bottom, whatever you have installed down at the bottom, there are these ArcGIS Enterprise updates. These get installed with the Esri software. So you go to ArcGIS Enterprise updates, and it's 10.5 and up because it's Enterprise. And then what it says is what you have installed. I have 10.7.1 installed on this. I have the data store installed on this. We have data reviewer license. So that's where my server, that's my level of server and my level of my data store. All of those have to be in sync. You can't have Portal 8 and ArcGIS Server 10.7 or even web adapters. All of those have to be the same thing. So if I'm looking at this and saying, oh, I have ArcGIS Server 10.7, that means I have Portal 10.7. I have the data store 10.7. I have the web adapters are 10.7. Well, all of those are the same thing. Okay, so that's how you find that again. I'm going to go down to, sorry, scrolling on the small screen. I'm going to go to my Windows document on the server, and then you can go down to ArcGIS and scroll down and see that ArcGIS Enterprise updates, that tool. All right. So moving forward with presentation. At 10.5, what happened at 10.5? Well, a lot of things changed at 10.5. That's when Esri changed the name to Enterprise. It was ArcGIS Server before that, and Portal was separate at 10.4. Yeah, it was available. You can install it, but it was separate. But now at ArcGIS Enterprise, everything kind of came under this umbrella. This was the last 10.5, not 10.5.1. There was a switch there, but 10.5 was the last time that supported Windows Server 2008 and SQL Server 2008. If you're going to go past 10.5, you need to have something more modern than SQL Server 2008 or Windows Server 2008 R2. I should have put an R2 there. There you go. This is also where they started with the whole server roles, with the image server, geo event server, business analytics server, which you would license each one of those individually and hopefully put them on a separate box. Image server used to be an extension, geo event used to be an extension. Now they're called server roles at this one. Practically speaking, we still call them extensions. I mean, even Esri folks call them extensions, but it's a server role that where you actually license server and then you license the geo event at the same time, or you license server and then you license image on the same box. Then you still have your main server, but you also license these on other machines. So this is Web App Builder. This is when that was introduced on your own portal. Before this, it was always on ArcGIS Online. And Enterprise Builder was released that replaced the old Esri Cloud Builder. It just is a new product. It's built differently. It's not, I think Cloud Builder was either on Flex or I don't know, some old Silverlight maybe even, I don't know what it was, but Cloud Builder isn't around anymore. It's this enterprise Java application that runs, that helps you install everything. This is a note. Enterprise Builder installs everything on one machine. Well, the next slide will show you what if you wanted to install it on multiple machines. 10.5, distributed collaboration between portals was introduced. 10.5.1, it was introduced as a special ask to get it to collaborate with ArcGIS Online. It's gotten better since then. You don't have to have asks specifically. You had to almost get in the beta or the early release to be able to kind of get access to that. So it was kind of a nuisance. All right, at 10.6, well, you need to reauthorize, because every point upgrade, everything with like a new point dot, you'll have to release or reauthorize your software. Whether or not you're licensed or have an EA, doesn't matter. You have to reauthorize. This is Enterprise Builder, got some updates, and Chef became available. This is the way to be able to enterprise distributed on multiple machines. The app launcher, which is the little Brady Bunch looking tool that we kind of talk about. So that's available now on Portal. The data tab allowed you to be able to interact with your data, not just see it. So you can actually edit the data tab at 10.6. This is in Portal. You can change and add lists or domains to your data. You can create fields, things like that. This is on data that is hosted features. That's going to be a theme. Administrator role can be used you can add vector-based maps, this now, pop-ups for Arcade. This is when Arcade kind of came around. More items are available with distributed collaboration. So you can now use applications and different tile packages and things like that. You can kind of put in your distributed collaboration. When distributed collaboration first came out at 10.5.1 or 10.5, you could just do pretty much maps and layers. And even then it was hanky or a little bit iffy, but now it's a little bit more robust at 10.6. And then you can create hosted feature layer views, meaning you can create a different symbology for a hosted feature layer that you've got on Portal. You can make another symbology, points at the same data, just like your enterprise database would, but it's a different symbology or query or pop-up or whatever it is. 10.6, if you had 10.6 and you're upgrading 10.6.1, you can just upgrade. You don't need to even get a new authorization package or anything. It just works. Now, this is kind of the biggest thing on this. Before this release, you could use SQL or a SQL instance as your hosting server. I'm not talking about your SD, put that aside for a second. But as your hosting server that allows you to have that data store, previous to this version at 10.6.1, you can actually use SQL for that. Well, that got really hard to support and kind of really cut down a lot of the speed, so there was some problems. And so they said, you know what, we don't want to do that anymore. You have to install Esri's ArcGIS data store if you want to have a hosting server. And it makes it a little bit faster, but that's what they pushed. They said, this is a big performance enhancement. All right. This is also when they released ArcGIS Enterprise sites, where you can kind of make a home screen for Portal based on different departments. So you might want to be able to have your public works departments and your planning department not have to go to the same home page. Well, that's an ArcGIS Enterprise site, and that's available now. It looks a lot like, I'm going to say, Hub. You're kind of recreating it for things based on their logins. It's nice. It's helpful. I think it's underutilized because it's a lot of administrative overhead to kind of keep things straight. This is when that whole the check mark came along and the deprecated and the authoritative contents. So if you have a layer, this is in Portal, you've seen this on ArcGIS Online because I know you guys are ArcGIS Online users. You can say this is authoritative or this is deprecated. You don't want to delete it, but you want to let people know, hey, this is not updated. We have a more updated layer that's checkmarked, right? I would use those if you don't, but this is when it was introduced at Portal. Now you can tell collaboration when to sync. This has continued to get more and more robust, right? So now before it was you were, I don't know when it's going to sync. Now it's more sync now, or sync at a specific time, right? That was 10.6.1. 10.7. We'll need to reauthorize because it's a point upgrade. You know, it's a point change. There's big changes to what it looks like just in the user interface. They added notebooks to that role package when we talked about image server and GeoEvent server and analytics server and all that kind of stuff. Now it's notebook server. I don't use Jupyter notebooks. I've used them in school for a class, but I haven't really used them in the wild and real worlds. Assuming if you're in academics, this might be a great thing for you to be able to have your own Jupyter notebooks on your own portal. I haven't really used them though, so I can't really speak a whole lot to that. You can create offline maps at a predetermined extent. If you ever had to create offline maps, it's kind of a pain in the neck. So now you can tell your users, hey, I'm going to tell you what to download, and you just get it with a sync. So that's kind of a helpful thing. Predetermined extent, it's an envelope, a square, or a rectangle of an area that you're able to download. There's a large list of enhancements for hosted feature layers. Now, these are layers that are on Esri's data store. They've gotten a little bit faster and better. You can, at this point, this one here, right? This publish to pro. This was because of us as users. This was because of our kicking and screaming and saying, do not take away our ability to publish to Portal. So now at 10.7, you can publish using Pro to just write to a server. Before, you had to publish through Portal, or you had to use a Python script in order to publish. So you would have to, we don't have to do that anymore. At this level, this supports now publishing directly to server, like you would through ArcMap. Shared instances are a big change in this. If you ever gone through the publishing process of ArcMap, you say, okay, well, how many instances or how many are we going to allot to this? And you have to at least choose one. You have to at least dedicate one soc.exe to process this data. Well, at 10.7, you can actually set that at 0 and say, hey, you know what? Unless somebody asks for this data, don't spin up an instance. Don't use any of my resources. In fact, share them with a pool of other services that I want to have for this. This is actually a pretty big change. But that ability to do that is only services that are served from Pro. So how these two are interacting with each other. See how that works. They've introduced webhooks. If you're not familiar with what those are, you can Google one of those 3 things and it'll help you. This is when Indoors, Tracker, Excalibur, and the ArcGIS companion apps were all released. And this also, HTTPS is now serviced by default. Now this is required. HTTPS was back, you had to use it in 10.6. But now this is almost by default, and they're moving just exclusively. If you don't have a secure ArcGIS Online, it yells at you every single time you log on. Hey, you need to make this secure. This is going to be antiquated or deprecated in later this year, so you got to use HTTPS. So that was just that part of that normal IT infrastructure update. 10.7.1, we're getting a little bit more released. So last year, summer last year, this is when this is the biggest change in 10.7.1 is you have different worker types. This has been around for a couple of years in the ArcGIS Online world. You can buy field workers for like, I don't know, what, 350, and editors are 250 a year. I don't know exactly how much they are. Viewers are like 100. In the portal world, this took to until 10.7.1 in order for you to get these abilities to have each one of these user types. The feel, the look and feel changes again at 10.7.1, even from 10.7, it changes. It looks more, I don't know if you saw my homepage. If I go to organization here, so I'm gonna pull this over. If I go to my organization, this looks a lot more like ArcGIS Online did than even 10.7, just with how this looks, and going to my settings and things like that. Settings being bigger buttons rather than tabs, all that kind of stuff, just to look more aligned with ArcGIS Online. Portal is always about 6 months behind ArcGIS Online, that release, just as an FYI. There are more management options for you for improvements of different, be able to, with joins and changing fields and moving fields and things like that. You can add cloud storage, file shares, things like that in Portal itself. When you actually add them to your ArcGIS server as a repository of data, those can be cloud locations. They're rather specific on cloud locations, but you can add those as a database or as connections to your data store in Portal. And then you can publish feature layers and map image layers from bulk in database. I'm more of a onesies, twosies type of person. I like to see and feel what I'm doing. So doing things in bulk always makes me nervous. All right, 10.8. Not to reauthorize, of course. There's a couple of cool things in 10.8. We have our demo server that is running 10.8. When you reorganize your fields, it reflects that way in the REST service. So previous to this, if you would do all these great alias things and all this reorganizing of your data, and in ArcMap you can adjust where the fields are at in that ArcMap document. But when you would publish, it would always default back to what it actually is in the database. Well, at 10.8 in ArcMap, which is interesting, this is ArcMap. I checked that 3 times. In ArcMap, when you reorganize your data structure or your field structure in that ArcMap document and publish that, then that persists all the way out to your REST endpoint. So if you want to move things around, it'll stay. It always stayed whether or not you hid or show or hide. That persisted, but reorganizing an ArcMap where the structure of your database, it would always revert back to what it is. So that's kind of a cool thing. Interesting that it's in Pro. Now this is when you publish things through Pro, that whole shared instance pool that I talked about is now default. You can place your entire enterprise into read-only. I don't know if you have some emergency or something like that. You just need to put the entire thing into read-only so people can't edit through Portal or whatever. It's like, it seems like that's like an emergency button, but there it is. You can put your entire enterprise into read-only. Parcel fabric and utility network are features that you don't really have a whole lot of time to talk about, but now they're hereby they're extensions. I'm realizing I've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Data store. In Server Manager is still around at 10.8, and now you can register a private cloud on AWS. I like that. Yeah, I just want to keep these here and kind of move on. But there's more things, and I don't know if you've noticed how this goes. It always seems as though there's a lot released in the 0.1 versions of things. So what is Esri doing with their whole short-term support and long-term support? So this is a website that I'm going to share with you at the end, but it's important to know about. When you go to this, there is a change that they're doing in short-term support and long-term support. So what that means is at short-term support and long-term support, they're using the point versions. Oops, excuse me, there was a wrong option there. There it is. So we can kind of see the extended supports of the point one goes out 5 full years from when it was released. But the point versions, the .6, .7, .8, only lasts for 3 years. So it actually, the point versions, the .8, .7, .6, you can see it almost, it's almost better to wait for, in my opinion, a point one for an upgrade, because you get 5 full years of support. So they're talking about these two different things between short-term support and long-term support. So those are two things that we kind of need to kind of change in our heads to be able to understand from Esri: short-term support, long-term support for the enterprise. And then the 2 documents that I'm going to give you along with that link is, or the link to the Esri's functionality matrix, and Esri, or a link to their architecting, the best practices for architecture. So we kind of went over some of those things and some of the functionalities. The enterprise document will show you what you get for your different license types of enterprise, how many users you would get. And the architecting is a lot better than it used to be. It used to be a really thick book with not a lot of pictures, but now they've kind of changed it a little bit more, and it's actually been rewritten in the recent years. So this is actually a pretty good document just to be able to help you understand. I know we're running up against the end here. So if Bill, if you got any questions that we can address?
Yep, couple here. When is SDE going to be end of life?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know if I can answer that question, and I don't know if Esri were here, they would probably say it's not. Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't see any. I haven't, honestly, and this is me talking. I have not seen any end of life documentation for SDE. Now, I think the person who's asking this is kind of seeing everything in that whole world moving towards Portal. So it's kind of like the writing on the wall. I think that's a wise thing, but you know, maybe we're at least 5 years out from that. So supporting.
Yep. Okay. And then do you have any advice on how to divvy up map surfaces between dedicated instances and shared instances? And when do you use dedicated over shared?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So let's go back to the, is this the one for the dedicated? Yeah, shared instances. So the shared instances, if you are able to have a layer that you need to have that is not, this is not your like your base map. This is not your zoning layer that you get 100 hits a day or something that's a very popular layer. These are like, you know, truck routes that somebody looks up, you know, once and every few months. And you can always see what's the most popular layer in Portal. So if you kind of publish things and you have a federated server and it's able to see things, Portal tracks the number of views that you have in per layer. So you would have to know and understand which of your layers are actually more popular than others. So if you have a shared pool of layers that maybe are less popular, but you don't want to necessarily allocate exactly, you know, you don't want to allocate an instance to that, it might take a little bit more for it to spin up and spool up the first time somebody calls it, because it has to start a service. But what you get on CPU is you're not having a service that's running for months and months and nobody's using it. So I would always kind of, you have to ask the question of how popular is this layer? It's very popular. Make sure that it's shared instance and give it a couple instances just to make sure. But if there's one that isn't, then that's when you can kind of use the shared instances. So that's my experience.
Yep. Another good one here. What are people budgeting to get 3 to 4 servers?
Oh, I'm not that's a it's going to be up to your IT. That's why you really have to, if you're talking budgeting, you would probably, if you're going to go VM, then your VM server is, your virtual machine server is going to be pretty pricey, you know, probably maybe towards 10,000. If you're just doing on Amazon, you know what, our Amazon bill, I'll just kind of say, we don't have a production environment. We use most of our stuff for demonstration, so it's not the most robust. But I've seen people spend on Amazon, you know, 500 per server a month. So if you wanted to use an Amazon server or an Amazon instance, you might save $500 to $600 per server. Now your web server can be a little bit less than that, so maybe that's down 300 or so. But you know, you're talking, you know, 1,500 to maybe $2,000 a month on server costs. Now, I don't know if you can exactly extrapolate that out one-to-one on hardware, but that's something that I would kind of offload to your IT department.
Great. That looks like all the questions we have here now. Micah, if you wanted to put those links up in the chat room for everybody.
Sure.
Yep. And while he's working on that,
I think I need to stop my share on that. Is that correct?
Yep.
No, I see it.
I'll switch over.
Okay.
So guys, while he's doing that, he's going to put a couple links up in the chat room for you guys, just with some of the information he covered today, and some things for you guys to save there for further reading and whatnot. So keep an eye out for that. But just wanted to wrap things up here. Again, thank you very much for attending today. Really hope you guys learned something. We stretched this one out a little longer than last time because some of the feedback from you guys, we were a little rushed on this topic. We wanted to flesh it out a little more. So again, make sure and keep your eyes open. We've started with surveys, follow up after, and then you can see on your screen there, of course, my email and my phone there as well. Either one of those can get in touch with us. If you're looking specifically for more help with your ArcGIS Online or Enterprise portal, anything like that, cloudpointgeo.com/kickstart is a good place to go. Kind of fleshes out some of our offerings there. And then just check us out, you know, all over the website. We've got more information on what we can do for you guys. Of course, we're on social media as well, so search around and follow us there. But as Micah gets those up, we thank you again for attending, and please be on the lookout for more webinars. And any other questions or anything, get a hold of us at any time. But otherwise, thank you so much and have a nice day.
Thanks, guys.